guys, how you all doing? In today's video we are going to look at 12 types of seams that you can use when you are doing your sewing projects. So let's get started. Number one is a flat or a plain seam. So basically you put your fabric together, right sides together, after you have cut your pieces, and you stitch. This is your flat seam. This is the most commonly used seam, right? Now the second one is a double stitched seam. A double stitched seam, you start off with a flat seam and then you do another row of stitch parallel to the one you just did. Now this is usually used for reinforcement or to add more strength to the seam. Now let's look at a French seam. Unlike your flat seam, your French seam, you start off by putting your wrong sides together. And then you stitch. Now if you can stitch as close as possible to the edge, then that is an excellent thing to do. If not, and you end up with too much bulk on the edge, you just go ahead and use your scissors and cut off as much as possible, because what we're going to do next is open the fabric, and just like we normally do when we're doing a flat seam, we are going to now put the right sides together. If you wanted to, you could press, but you don't have to, right? Now the reason why we want to make sure there's not too much bulk behind here is when we're done stitching, we do not want to see the first stitch, the raw edges of the first stitches poking through, right? So I'll go ahead and stitch. Now this is our French seam. It's what the right side looks like, and this is what the wrong side looks like. So it is good for literally not just enclosing the raw edges so that you end up with a clean work. Now for example, I actually did a video that I will link for you, that I did a little storage caddy, and I didn't want to use an insert, so I did French seams so that I encase all the raw edges, and so that you do not see them when you look inside of the tote. Basically, this is the right side of the tote and this is the wrong side of the tote, right? So you're not seeing any raw edges, and I don't have to use a liner because it's all cleanly finished on the inside with French seams. Let's do a flat fell seam. I am gonna go ahead and I am gonna cut, let's just open it, cut this into two pieces so I can do the demonstration. Now for a flat fell seam, you are starting with your fabric pieces with the right sides together, And you want to leave at least a 1/2 inch from the edge to your stitch line. Now your next step is going to be to open the seam and basically cut a part of one side of your seam. Then the next thing you're going to do is open your seam and fold over the edge here. You can press. I am not going to press right now. Moreover, this fabric won't take too much pressing. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold over and stitch. So you just fold right along. So you fold and stitch as you go, making sure that your seam is opened fully. The idea here is to hide the raw edges. Now, this is what it looks like when you're done. This is your wrong side, and this is your right side. The thing about this is that your stitch is going to show on the right side. So you have to make sure this is the appropriate seam you want. It is excellent because you can actually use it to add detail. Like I have the red thread going here now, so that's like an added detail on the right side if you're doing like a tote bag or a laundry bag or a storage caddy or a cushion. Yeah, so this is a flat fell seam. It also reinforces your seam. The next one we're going to look at is a lapped seam. I am going to use 2 different weight fabric to show you how you can do a lapped seam. For a lapped seam, you decide on how far in, a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, you want your seam to be, and you are going to go ahead and press. Now, if you can do it without the pressing step, that's fine, but pressing will help. So I'm going to go ahead and press down. I think this is probably about a 1/2 inch. And then I am going to open this. Now what this does is it leaves me with a mark, right? And then I am going to go ahead and I am actually going to also press down just about a 1/2 inch on this side also. Okay, now it's saying something. It's hot. Okay, and then basically what I'm going to do is bring the 2 pieces of fabric together just like so. So what this line does is show me where to put my piece of fabric overlapping the other piece, right? I take it to the sewing machine and I stitch. Okay? My thread just fell out of my needle. Let's see how quickly I can thread this needle. Okay, gotta give me a sharp, and then go ahead, and I threaded the needle just like that. I am so used to threading the needle now, so I don't even have to see the needle hole to thread the needle. Okay, there we go. So let's do that. Okay. So this is actually a lapped, did I say a lapped seam or a lapped stitch? It's a lapped seam. There we go. We have joined our two pieces of fabric just by overlapping them. I should point out that when you're overlapping your fabric, you need to overlap on the right side, right? So that's right side overlapping right side. If we're doing like vinyl, if we're using like vinyl to do our project, it's a good time to use an overlap stitch because the vinyl creates so much bulk that if you're supposed to turn it like this and to stitch it on, you're going to end up with 3 layers, and your sewing machine might not be able to handle that. If it can, then by all means, yeah, you're good. But if not, what you can do is just create a pinking shear edge just like this to create more detail. If you're doing, for example, a laundry hamper, and then what you're going to do is, if you decide that you want to do a 1/4 inch seam, for example, you go ahead and you measure off about a 1/2 inch and you mark. I iron the other fabric. I can't iron or press this, so I'm using a piece of chalk. And then what I'm going to do is take this to the edge here where my line is, and then take it to the sewing machine and stitch. Now, by all means, if you wanted to do a double stitch here to create some more detail, what you could do is, instead of doing a 1/2 inch in, you could do an inch in, an inch of overlap, so you'll be able to stitch once and then stitch another time to get that saddle look stitch, right? Now, saddle stitch is a bit different. I think I am going to try to show it to you. Okay, so that's that. Now let's look at the bound stitch. Okay, a bound stitch. I'm gonna cut this in 2. And we start, just a bound stitch, a bound seam. We start by doing a flat seam. And then you can either use pieces of fabric or you can use bias tape, right? Now, your bias tape folds like this over the edge. Now, if you want to open your seam, you can open your seam and do it, depending on what you're doing. Or if you want to leave your seam closed, you can leave your seam closed and do it. The idea is the edges, the raw edges, will be encased in the bias tape, right? Now, I have a bigger bias tape here, so let's see. Basically what we'll do is put it in just like that. It's a sandwich. and then we just stitch it on. So right here I am doing the open seam, so I will do this first and then I will do the next side. Now, depending on what you're doing, you can go ahead and press so that you get the other piece out of the way. This piece under the bottom here I'm talking. So yeah, there we go. And the bigger your bias tape is the easier it is for you to handle it. Okay, now that's it. So you have a bound seam. You get the gist, right? So you'll just have to do the same thing on the other side, right? I'm not going to do it with this one because it's going to take up too much time. Let's move on. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is well, we already did a double stitch seam. We're going to do a top stitched seam. Now, let's cut a piece of this. Oh, sorry. Maybe some people would want to see me finish this. So let's just finish this. Let's, so you can see what it looks like. Okay, let's finish it. Let's finish it. My mama say whatever is worth doing well. Okay, there we go. So the one side is finished. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. You could actually go ahead. Let me just stop this and show you. You could actually go ahead, get your bias tape and press it to create a kind of a crease in the middle. Let's get this off here. So you make sure your bias tape is equal on both sides when you do this. Actually, some bias tape come just like that, where they actually have a crease in the middle. When it's like that, it's easier to work with, right? So let's go ahead and finish this off. Yeah, so there we are. Now we just stick this in. No problem, man, no problem. It's the Jamaican in me. Yeah. Okay, there we go. You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. Okay. There we go. We are good. Now I may pick this bias tape back off and use it again, so I'm not going to cut it again. But that's basically what it is. A bound seam. You basically bind the edges of the seam to cover the raw edges. We're going to look at a top stitch seam, and we are going to just cut our fabric here. we go. Top stitch seam, you start by doing a simple flat stitch seam. Okay, so after you have done your flat seam, you're gonna go ahead and you can press, because when you press your fabric when you're working, it's not easy to press this fabric, but when you're working and you press your fabric, it makes it way easier for you. So what you do then is, after you have flattened your seam, you go ahead and you stitch on top of the, let's call it the flap. Okay, actually no, I'm just doing a top stitch, so I'm a bit distracted, sorry guys. So yeah, to do your top stitch, you just keep both flaps together on one side and you just basically stitch parallel to your flat seam stitch. There we go. And this is your top stitched seam. Now there is such a thing as a double top stitch seam. Now a double top stitch seam, let's cut this again. You put your right sides together. And you stitch, starting with a flat seam. And then this is the one that you open up and you do a parallel stitch to your flat seam stitch, and then you do the same thing on the other side. Now, a seam such as this can be used to add detail to your project, and it also reinforces the seam, right? So, top stitch is one that both flaps go to the one side, and a double top stitch is you open the seam and stitch on both sides, right? Now, a corded seam. Corded seam is basically one that you put the cord in. Now you can get different materials, different sizes. A lot of times we use these type of seams when we are making corded cushions. So we basically just put the cord in between, and this you usually do when you use a zipper foot. Now let's see, where is my zipper foot? Here is my zipper foot. So basically, put that one up, and I'm gonna put on, come on. Why are you giving me so much trouble? There we go. Okay, so you just go ahead like this, I think I should get you guys closer. You're doing stuff like adding cording to like the edges of a cushion, and there are other instances that you add cording or welting. And the next stitch is going to be a mock French seam. On second thoughts, I'm not going to use this. I want to be able to press it, and that's not going to allow me to press, right? So yeah, what you do to do a mock French seam is put your right side together. A French seam, you start with the left sides together. A mock French seam, you start with the right sides together and you stitch. Now I'm going to change back this. Okay, so that's the 10th type of seam that we are doing. So I'll go ahead and I will press. Not press, stitch. Sorry guys, I'm a bit distracted. At some point I'll let you know why, but life goes on. Okay, so now I am gonna go ahead, I'm gonna open the seam and I'm gonna press. Then I am gonna fold this edge inwards here to the center and I am gonna press. Now I am going to do the same thing on this side. Fold it in to the center and press. Now if you are trying any of these seams, you have to remember to allow for the allowance so that when you're done, your project is just fine. It's not too small or too big. And then we bring this together just like so and stitch. Okay, so this is our mocked French seam. Now, it doesn't add anything decorative to your project, but it does add strength to your seam and it cleans up the inside so you don't have any raw edges, right? Now, our next, I'm going to do the saddle stitch, but I think I am going to leave that one for last, and I am going to do a double lapped seam. I keep wanting to say stitch. A double lapped seam. Okay, so we are going to do our double lapped seam. The difference between the double lapped seam and the lapped seam is that you still have raw edges showing when you're done with your lapped seam, but your double lapped seam intends to hide all raw edges. Right now I am going to need to press, and I am going to go ahead and press just about maybe a 1/4 inch. Let's do a 1/4 inch seam. So I am just gonna fold and press. And if you notice, I am pressing towards the right side. And then I am going to go ahead and do the same thing here, but this time I am going to press towards the left or the wrong side. And then what we're going to do next is turn the fabric just like so, and we are going to, it's like you're hooking them together. So I'm going to put it just like so, and we're going to go ahead and stitch. Right? So that's the, oh, my presser foot is off there. So we are going to go ahead and let's say we're hooking the two hooks that we just made, and we are going to stitch. All the while making sure that your fabric is together the way you need it to be, right? It is clean on this side and it's clean on this side. You don't see any raw edges, as opposed to the single lap or just the plain lap stitch. You still see the raw edge. The 12th and final stitch is going to be the saddle stitch. Okay, so let's do our saddle stitch. The first thing I am going to do is stitch the two pieces of vinyl together. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want it to shift. So I am going to use the biggest stitch I have on my sewing machine, and I'm not going to knot the ends. This is basically, I'm not making anything. I'm basically showing you how to do a saddle stitch. Now that I have stitched the two pieces together, what I'm going to do is use my ruler, and I am going to mark off every half an inch, right? I'm just going to take it maybe about 1/8 of an inch from the edge here, and I'm going to go ahead and mark 1/2 inch all the way. There we go. And then I am going to use my punch. Now I'm going to use the smallest setting on the punch here. If you want one of these and you're in Canada, they're at Canadian Tire for under 20 bucks. On Amazon for under 15 bucks, right? So this one I inherited. So I'm going to go ahead and I am just going to punch. Just going to punch right where I have marked. Now on the other side, it's going to look like it's not punched out. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. But believe me, it is punched out. Now, you shifted on me. You shifted on me. So I just got to make sure I go back over these because it shifted. This is supposed to go against this. So let's just do them again. The front was punched, but because it wasn't lined up properly, the back wasn't punched. So yeah, there we go. We are good. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure it's lined up properly. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now we are gonna need 2 needles to do our saddle stitch. 2 needles. And you can use nylon cord. I'm gonna use this crochet cord. You can use burlap twine. And what I'm gonna do is string my first needle here. This would be a good time to use my needle stringer, wouldn't it? But anyways, there. And I am going to go ahead and push my needle through with my cord. And then I am going to string the other needle on the other side. There we go. There we go. Now, at this stage, it would be nice if I had something to hold it in place like this, but I don't. So I'm going to do the next best thing. The next best thing is to put this between my knees, right? And I chose this color thread because I wanted you to be able to see what I was doing here, right? Or what I am doing here. So I'm going to take my needle here. I'm going to push it through this hole. And I'm going to take the needle on the other side and push it through the same hole. What we are doing is a saddle stitch. Why did this do this? There. Then we're gonna just go back and forth through the same hole. There we go. I'll turn it to the side soon and show you what it looks like. Okay, so we push this through here, pull it through, then push this through here, pull it through. We're just crisscrossing. And it doesn't matter which one goes through first. It just matters that they go through the same hole. And a saddle stitched seam is usually decorative, right? As a matter of fact, you don't even have to crisscross like this. This is how it's done, but you could literally just take your one needle, push it through here, push it back through here, push it through here, push it back through here, and then take this other needle, push it through, push it through, push it through. You end up with the same result, right? There we go. Now, what you can do to finish off your stitch is to take your needle back, push it on the inside, take it back here, push it on the inside. There we go. And then just, take the needles off and tie off. And it's going to tie off on the inside. So that's it. Tie it a couple of times, tie it 3 times, and then cut off the excess and you're done. That is your saddle stitch. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this video was helpful to you, please hit subscribe and help me to get to 5,000 subscribers. Leave your comment below. Let me know what you think. Like and share. I will see you again soon.